Hey everybody. Yeah, so I'm going to do my review on Hocus Pocus 2, which I actually really loved. There will be spoilers of both movies. Now, if you haven't seen the 1993 one, I don't know what actual rock you've been living under. Um, anyway, but I loved Hocus Pocus 2. I've said this before for other reviews, but I just enjoy movies for enjoying them. I'm not really like critical of it as much as I think other people would be. Um I mean, there have been people who said like, well, we want the originals other than the Sanderson sisters, like Max and Allison and Danny, and I'm like, well, but you wouldn't be happy with them in the background. So that's true. Like I probably wouldn't have been. I would have liked seeing them, but yes, I would have been like, if they're there, why is, but on the flip side, I kind of would enjoy it for its own story, which this is a new story. This is, new faces, which I also enjoyed. Um because I think like I have the book somewhere. I don't know what happened to it. I was like organizing things and I put it away somewhere and then I just lost it. So I didn't get to finish the book. For like Hocus Pocus, like the sequel. So I don't know how that one ended. But it had something to do with like Max Nelson's like daughter or something like that. So yeah, anyway. Uh so overall I loved it. There was a couple things I'll nitpick at, but I'll get into that. So basically you've got some new faces. You've got Becca, who's just turned 16. And basically she and her friend Izzy are on the outs with their former friend. And I say quotations because, they kind of make up by the end of the movie. But their former friend, Cassie, who also happens to be the mayor's daughter. The mayor, who is a descendant of the Reverend who persecuted the Sanderson sisters. And you see that in the first, like scene, basically giving backstory to the Sanderson sisters. So Cassie kind of is doing the whole like, hanging with the cool crowd and no longer hangs out with, her friends who do the whole, you know, basically they have this tradition every year where they do like a spooky like a movie marathon and they do like a whole conjuring thing in the woods type of thing. It's just um but Cassie, I think they mentioned in the movie, because I've only seen the movie twice now. I think they mentioned it's like 4 months or so that they've been kind of on the outs. Um, but yeah, so that those are the new faces. There's Gilbert, who's the shop owner for like this new kind of magician's store, which basically is the Sanderson sisters' old cottage, because it's been converted over the years. So aside from the beginning scene where you get backstory of the Sanderson sisters, like how they're persecuted and how Winifred was supposed to, be married off on her 16th birthday, um, which is not uncommon for, old world. So, I mean, um, she was very forward thinking for her time. Gilbert says that in the movie, but, it's true. Like, basically, she's like, I don't want to just be married off. Like, no, that's not cool. And she wants to stay with her sisters, and they try to tear her and her sisters apart. So, yeah, they run away. And then they exact revenge when the Mother Witch gives Book to Winifred. And I would have liked to see more of Mother Witch. Like, I personally would have. Maybe there's some deleted scenes that I don't know about, but it would have been nice to see more of that. Now, this will come into play later, but I think, if I'm not mistaken, I've only seen the movie twice. Mother Witch's eyes glow. Um, and it could have been that she did the spell, the Magicae Maxima, which is like the power spell. It could have been that she did the power spell, and that's why her eyes were glowing. So she's all powerful. But there is a price to be paid for that power spell, which you find out later. Anyway, so basically, aside from the backstory of the Sanderson sisters, you have the new faces, and Becca basically gets a candle for her birthday from Gilbert. Tricks her into lighting, tricks her by saying, "Oh, it's just a candle. It's another black flame candle." So, yeah. So basically, like, they resurrect the Sanderson sisters. Now, her and Izzy are doing their best to, like, you know, doing their best, you know, to get out of the tough situation. So they go to Gilbert, only to find out that he tricked them because he is a super fan of the Sanderson sisters. Like, he wanted to bring them back. You see that all the time with villains having their acolytes, you know, worship them, idolize them, want to spring them out of jail or whatever. And that's what Gilbert pretty much was. Is he was just like, he saw them on that night in 1993 and he was like, yeah, cool. And then he wanted to bring them back because he became a super fan of them. Because apparently he also mentioned like reading the old Reverend's journals, like the kind of pull that you have to see artifacts if it's in a museum. I'm just like, how do you get his hands on that? I don't know. Unless the Reverend's journals were somewhere in the cottage, and you know, so that's something I'm like, how do you get his hands on something like that? Because this is like Reverend Trask, like that's like hundreds of years old. Like, how do you get his hands on it? Anyway, so I'm not gonna go over the entire movie, but basically, like, that's kind of the setting where, you know, Becca somehow resurrects the Sanderson sisters, and so they're trying to, you know, figure out what they can do to, you know, stop them. Because this time, instead of doing like just a potion, they want to do the magic spell, the power spell, and they want to, you know, become all powerful. So they have to get certain ingredients. So Gilbert is cursed to help them, and so you see Billy Butcherson. And basically, Becca and Izzy are trying to warn Cassie because they want the blood of thy enemy, which is the Mayor Trask is literally the descendant of the Reverend Trask, who was their enemy. And you see that in the first scene. So they're trying to get his blood. So they're trying to protect the mayor. Now, I'm going to interject here with, even though Becca and Izzy aren't really talking to Cassie anymore, like Cassie, you know, is Trask's daughter, they are still really nice to him. And it's because, and I love Tony Hale. I love him so much. I love all of his roles. But he just does this perfect, adorable, sweet man persona. Like, I'm pretty sure that's probably just really him. And it's just him acting like himself on screen. That's what I want it to be. Okay, I don't know. I've never met him. But he seems like he'd be a sweet person. So anyway, that's... like, even though they're not really talking to Cassie, they still are really nice to him. And they're just like, he's like the sweetest man. Like, he is. Like, they don't have the heart to tell him that they're not really talking to his daughter anymore because his daughter's kind of like with the cool kids now. So yeah, it's just and he's obsessed with getting a certain specific candied apple throughout the movie. And I mean, if you've had a specific type of like food where... Sorry, I had to sneeze. It is the season for more sneezing and colds and things like that. Anytime the seasons change, my nose just goes AWOL. Anyway, so if you've ever had like a specific type of food that just transcends everything for you, that's what the mayor is like. He's just like, this will change your life. Like, he's just wanting this candy apple. Like, he wants a specific one from this specific person. And so he's obsessed with getting that for the film. So don't blame him if you've had like a particular food that just nothing else compares to it. Yeah. So anyway, that's what he's obsessing over. In their quest to basically protect his life, they let him know that Cassie's having a secret party that she's not supposed to because her popular boyfriend convinced her to have a party without daddy's permission. So very classic. So they're trying to get him to go back home so he's not, you know, where the Sanderson sisters can find him. Which means that they kind of run into Cassie. And I'm going to tell you right now that they try to resolve their kind of fighting, their, you know, differences and all that. Like in the middle of them, like trapping the Sanderson sisters in the garage with salt, like basically like, oh, you know, we trapped them. So now they're trying to hash out like, you know, why did you not invite me to this? Or why didn't you invite us to the party or blah, blah, blah. And Becca and Izzy are like, cause you want to hang out with your boyfriend all the time and his friends who make fun of us all the time. And Cassie's like, I have no idea. So this is one of my things that I'm like, yeah, I know you totally had an idea, because for the last few months, like, he's making fun of them, and he makes fun of them in front of Cassie at school, like in one of the scenes. And it's like, she doesn't speak up. She doesn't try to correct him. She doesn't try, like, she's just like, oh no, I don't want to, because she wouldn't be part of the cool crowd. Like, I've seen it before. I've seen people like literally dump me because I'm not cool enough. I was part of that group in high school that was the misfits, the weirdos, yeah. I was part of that group. You know, all the nerds that got made fun of. Yes, I was part of that group. So, it's funny because some people, like my sister, thought I was considered popular senior year of high school. And I was just really nice to a lot of people. And I said hi to a lot of people. I was actually heavily depressed senior year. You wouldn't have guessed it because of how bubbly I acted. But yeah, because there's still that stigma saying that depression means that you have to be emo. No. But anyway, yeah, no, I've seen this before, so Cassie's basically part of her boyfriend's group of cool kids, and, they got the Leatherman jackets, they're probably jocks, like, they seem like it, at least that stereotype in, that kind of, setting. But yeah, Beck and Izzy are like, you make fun of us and call us weirdos all the time. Like, yeah, that upsets us. We're not going to want to hang out with you. But Cassie tries to play it off like, I had no idea. And I'm just like, no, you totally had an idea. You didn't try to correct him when he made fun of him in class. You didn't try to... I mean, Becca kind of messed with him a little bit too. She messed back with him because she just said a whole bunch of words that she says, like, I'm just naming off vegan food. And he's just like, you said a bunch of, like, satanic blah, 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 blah. She's like, I just listed off vegan food, like, ingredients. That's it. Like, I didn't do... No. But yeah, the boyfriend Mike comes across as very dim-witted. But Cassie tries to play up the dim-wittedness herself, which I'm just like, no, you totally knew he was making fun of your friends. You witnessed it happening and you say nothing. You didn't speak up. So yeah, no, I'm pretty sure you know why they don't want to hang out with you anymore, because you're hanging out with a crowd that's kind of ostracizing them. So I was like irritated. I think that's because, for me personally, I've had that happen to me before, where like, I thought I was, friends with someone, and apparently they thought I was a complete weirdo. Or I was ostracized because a friend of a friend of a friend was like, oh, she believes in this weird stuff. Like, I was pitching ideas for my book series, and I was like, what if I was asking, like, what if I told you that I'm a reincarnated goddess? Like, I'm not actually... Guys, I'm not actually, but I'm like doing this because of my character, like, that I'm writing. I was like, what if I told you, like, and they're just like, are you? I'm like, no, I'm not. I'm just like, this is a character. But if she came up and, like, if someone came up and told you that, like, would you believe them? Probably not. So I'm trying to get, like, a real, like, feel for how someone would react. And apparently they thought that I really believed that. So yeah. And so this person thought I was really weird. And not just about one of the ex-boyfriends, but no, like, someone actually thought that I thought that, and they were telling a bunch of people. And so someone that I thought was my friend stopped hanging out with me. And yeah, it was really weird. So, I mean, like, me personally, I just get irritated whenever I see that, where it's like, I had no idea that you were really upset about this. Oh, and I'm just like, you totally had an idea. Sneezing a lot today, apparently. Okay. All right, let's move forward. All right, so that was my, like, kind of moment with that. Then, okay, so basically we go through the movie where, the Sanderson sisters, they cast the power spell. And Book is not feeling it. Book is not vibing. The Book has an opinion. He does not like them doing this power spell because there's a cost to be paid, and he doesn't want them to pay it. So he actually willingly goes to Becca, because Becca finds out she's a witch. She actually has powers. And so Book shows her the warning label. There's a warning label with the power spell, and basically it's that you will sacrifice what you love most, what you value most. And yeah, Winifred is pretty evil, but she values her sisters most, which I think is like there's that foreshadowing in the first scene where she literally does everything in her power to keep her and her sisters together. Um, and yeah, she's abusive, she's obnoxious, she's very manipulative. Um, and they annoy her to no end, but she loves them dearly. They're her sisters. Like they're everything to her. So, yeah, uh, at the end, like, yeah, she has the ultimate power and her eyes glow, just like the Mother Witch's eyes, I believe, glowed in the beginning of the movie. So I think the Mother Witch actually did that power spell, and that's what happened to her coven. Because they asked her, like, where's your coven? Because she mentioned, like, a coven is the best thing that you can have. And, Winifred's like, well, where's yours? And she's like, long gone, I'm afraid. And, like, I think maybe she did the power spell, and what she valued most was sacrificed. And that's why she no longer has a coven. But, and that's also why she tells Winifred never do the power spell. So Winifred promises Book, like, okay, I promise that I'll never do. I mean, she's supposed to be 16. And the way that she says it, she doesn't actually mean it. But she's just like, but she does ask, like, why? Why can't I do it? And of course, in very classic parental fashion, she says, because I said so. And then Mother Witch, like, disappears. But yeah, her eyes kind of glowed a little bit, and I was like, oh, maybe, like, now that I've seen it a couple times, the movie, I was like, okay, so maybe Mother Witch did that spell, and that's why she doesn't have her coven anymore. But when Winifred does it, and her eyes glow, and then her sisters start to disappear, and she freaks out, and she becomes very emotional. And even though, yeah, she's supposed to be kind of evil, Becca and Izzy and Cassie are like, okay, they're like, what about your power? And Winifred's like, my power means nothing without my sisters. Like, my sisters are everything. Like, bring them back. And Becca reads off a spell, but it's not to bring them back. It's to reunite Winifred with her sisters. So Winifred will go wherever her sisters are. So kind of two birds, one stone, because they get rid of a powerful witch that's going to, try to wreak havoc on all of Salem. And also she gets to be with her sisters, and she lets go of that power. So it's like, okay. So yeah, I didn't go over the entire movie, because that would be a bit too long, but those are kind of the highlights of, what's been going on. Now, of course, Becca and Izzy and Cassie, kind of make up or whatever, and they're friends again. Especially since Becca shared her powers with her best friends, which is part of the actual warning label for the power spell, is to share your power. Like, you should share your power. If you don't, then yeah. And I think that's what happens. Winifred wanted it for herself. Now, she wanted her sisters alongside her, but she wanted her to be the most powerful, to be the leader, to be, the greatest. And unfortunately, maybe that's part of the reason why her sisters were sacrificed, is not just that they were what she valued most, but because she didn't want to share power with them. In the end, she goes to them wherever they're at. But yeah. And here's my other little nitpick. So Billy's back, right? Because one of the ingredients in the power spell is the head of a lover. Now, it's funny because in the beginning scene, the beginning of the movie, she's like, I can't marry this guy. I have to be with Billy Butcherson. And he's like, why? And she's like, because we kissed. We shared that one kiss by the graveyard. Everyone's like, ugh. And he's just like, one kiss. Now, back then, yeah, they probably could have considered that, like, to be a lover because they kissed and they're unchaperoned, and, oh, it's a sin against God, and blah, 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 blah. But nowadays we have a different vibe when it comes to saying that someone is someone's lover. It's a little bit more than a kiss. So I think that's the thing, is that people assumed that it was, more between Winifred and Billy, and she caught Billy with Sarah. Well, technically, maybe Sarah was his actual lover, from the way that she really likes men. She really likes, hanging out with people like that. So maybe he was getting on with Sarah, and Winifred was jealous because they shared that one kiss. I don't know. Anyway, I've seen some videos where people were theorizing that the reason why Billy didn't actually go to sleep from the first movie, because he's supposed to be asleep. Thackeray Binks, his spirit was lifted. He went to heaven with his sister or whatever, right? Because it's like, oh, the witches are dead. Now I'm free from my curse. But Billy didn't sleep. For 29 years, he didn't sleep. He was just stuck. And it's like, well, if Thackeray Binks like can go to heaven, like why wasn't Billy freed as well from that curse? And people were trying to theorize that it's, oh, he had unfinished business. I was like, I don't think so. I think that if it were unfinished business, like, wouldn't he have told like Danny and Allison and Max about not being Winifred's lover? Like, there's so much, there's parts in between from the first movie where they're walking around, right? They could have been having a conversation. I mean, they seem to be on pretty good terms with, Billy Butcherson and the zombie after the initial scare. So, and they even address it like, oh, you're Winifred's boyfriend. And it's like, he gets irritated about that in Hocus Pocus 2 and corrects Gilbert repeatedly. Like, I'm not her lover. I'm not her boyfriend. We shared one kiss. That's not what happened. And it's like, wouldn't he have been upset and corrected them in the first movie? Probably off screen. We didn't see him. I don't think that's unfinished business. I don't think so. If you follow any type of lore when it comes to magic or, mythology, it could be, and this is my theory, is that it's a different type of curse. The kind with Thackeray Binks, I feel like that was just more of a, getting to a certain point and then you're done. With Billy, it would have been like, I feel like it's more of the intent, like the type of curse, the length of time, like, because you can put a time on a curse. You can put a time on, you can like end it, or there can be a clause that says it will be ended by this or that. Like, magic isn't just one thing. There's all sorts of different ways to do it. Like length of time, intent, like what you're trying to accomplish. There could be caveats woven to the spell. Like, there's so much. So, I mean, I feel like it's a different type of curse. It's a different type of intent. So I think that's why in this case, Billy was finally freed. Because it's like, oh, the curse has been lifted finally. Like, their final deaths. Well, is it really their final deaths? Because in an end credit scene, I sneeze again. Yep. 3 times in one video. That's great. Okay. Anyway. At the very end credit scene, like after credit scene, you see the cat Cobweb, Gilbert's cat Cobwebs, go onto a shelf, and it says, like, it's Black Flame Candle 2, like BF candle number 2. So maybe he made more than one Black Flame candle. So, I mean, like, that opens up to a possibility of them returning for whatever reason. I mean, like, I can understand them returning this time, but I don't know what kind of story they tell for another time. Especially since you have Becca, Izzy, and Cassie as the kind of new coven in Salem, who are not evil witches and don't intend to be. So, like, I don't know. Like, maybe it could be like a face-off between covens or something. I don't know. But anyway, it just, like, Thackeray Binks, I said, like, the witches are dead, so I'm free. And in this one, Billy said their final death, like, it's their final death. They're finally dead. So now I'm completely free. And it's like, I don't think so. I feel like it's just a different type of curse, or a different type of, intent with the curse and how the spell was woven in general. Because nothing is just one way when it comes to like magic and mythology and stuff like that. And like, yeah, it's not just one way to do things. Like there's so many different ways, so many varieties of ways that you can do a spell, and do magic and how it's represented. I mean, there are different retellings of there are retellings of things for magic, all over in media, books, and they vary, right? Well, that's the same with how magic would be. There are supposed to be like certain set laws, the core beliefs or whatever, but in all the retellings and all the books I've read and all the stuff, all the research I've ever done when it comes to like magical stuff, it's that, intent and length of time and all that kind of stuff like that, that can be tweaked a bit. So I think that's my theory when it comes to Billy and how he didn't actually sleep for, officially rest after the first movie. So that was my, like, it felt like a plot hole. Like it felt like just like this little plot hole put in there. Like, wouldn't he have addressed that in the first movie? Be like, I'm not her boyfriend, yeah. Anyway, because Allison mentions it. She's like, "Oh, your boyfriend's boyfriend." It's like, like I feel like he would have told them the truth. So I don't think it was unfinished business about telling Gilbert, because that's been the theory I saw in a few videos online when they were reviewing the movie, and I don't think that's what it was. That seems a bit too, nah, a bit too loosey goosey there for that. But anyway, yeah. So that, I mean, I described some of the movie because I was leading up to those little pieces that I nitpicked. Um, but that aside, that was it. That's the only thing that I nitpicked about is, Cassie not knowing that, her boyfriend's making fun of her friends. Like, yeah, no, you noticed. Um, and then the whole plot hole with Billy Butcherson, and not actually resting for 29 years. Um, but I love the movie. I really loved it. I know that I'm probably missing a lot, but I saw all these different references to the first movie. I liked having a bit of the backstory for the Sanderson sisters. I love that, Bette Miller and Sarah Jessica Parker and Kathy and Jamie. I'm so glad that they came back. I was actually happy to see new faces. I was happy to see like a new generation. Um, and maybe it's because I grew up with Disney Channel original movies that I'm not upset by that type of vibe that I'm getting from this movie. Because I saw that like a lot of people are complaining, like, oh, it's like that straight to video type of movie feel. And no, no, no. I'm just like, yeah, I grew up with Disney Channel original movies. Okay. I mean, like you have like the original Under Wraps, you've got Halloween Town. I mean, you've got Don't Look Under the Bed. I mean, you've got Xenon, Girl of the 20%. Like you've got all these different kinds of like Disney Channel original movies, that a lot of them didn't hit theaters, and that was fine. It felt very like personal in a way, but that's what I grew up with. Like I grew up in the 90s and 2000, like the early 2000s. Like I was a teenager then, but I still love watching those movies even as a teenager. So this has that feel to it, that original movie feel to it, that it wasn't in theaters, but it's on the Disney Channel. So I'm okay with that, but that's because I grew up with that. I think a lot of people either are just miffed because they don't have all of the original cast, or it's a new generation that doesn't understand what Disney Channel original movies are. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know why people are upset. I'm happy that this movie was even made. Okay? I mean, you have the original Sanderson sisters. I love that. And I do love the story of, like being together with others and, what are you giving up? If you want all this, you have to give something up. And that your coven is everything, like your friends, your family. Now, I mean, obviously everything should be nuanced to someone's situation, because I mean, I have family that are toxic and I definitely do not talk to anymore because they are toxic. So it doesn't matter if we're blood relations. But I do like the, community kind of that message of, like closeness with others and being there for each other. So I'm okay with that. But yeah, I love the movie. I hope that if you haven't seen it, you will give it a chance. It is definitely worth watching. I'm probably gonna watch it again throughout October. I mean, I'm kind of in the middle of rewatching Halloween Town for like the millionth time, and also Halloween Town 2, Calabar's Revenge. Um, Now I did warn my boys not to watch Don't Look Under the Bed because that freaked me out when I was younger. And they get scared when it comes to things under the bed sort of stuff. So I'm like, yeah, don't. I think they're a bit young for it anyway, but still. They're gonna watch stuff sometimes even if I don't want them to. Because they're kids and we've done that too to our parents. But yeah, no, I watched Hocus Pocus 2 with my boys. They started watching it like right before bed last week, and I was just super tired. I just did not want to fight it. I was just so exhausted. And then we finished it the next day. Like we only watched like 40 minutes of it, and then we went to bed. And then the next day after, um, I thought I was going to sneeze again. I was like about to yawn. I thought I was going to sneeze. I can feel the tingling though. And then after errands, like we came back and we watched the rest of it, and the boys liked it. They didn't quite understand some of it, but that's okay. And then, oh, the other complaint that people had about the movie that I also think is just whatever, and it was that it doesn't have the same feel. Like, it feels like it's too kidified. Like Disney just Disneyed their own movie. I'm just like, yeah, probably because the original was done in 1993, whereas different standards for movies and what is considered family appropriate. Um, I am very happy that Disney has not erased a lot of the stuff that they had before, but at least they're adding like this movie depicts blah 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 blah. Like they have warning labels. Like we're not going to erase it, pretend it never existed. If we made mistakes or we definitely misrepresented people in the past, yeah, that's not good. But this is a warning to let you know that we did that. We're not going to erase it. We will own up to that. We did that. And moving forward, we're not going to do that anymore, right? So that's the correct response. And this movie is not going to be as loose with stuff as the original was. I mean, it's technically still a family film, but the original Hocus Pocus didn't sugarcoat things. So they're trying to make it slightly a bit more appropriate for today's standards, and I'm not mad at that at all. There was even a scene where Gilbert in his shop in the sister's cottage is doing like a little skit or whatever, like every Halloween, like, oh, the Sanderson sisters. And he mentions a virgin lighting the black flame candle. And there was a little kid in the audience, like, everyone's sitting on the floor watching him while Gilbert's on stage. And he's like, what's a virgin? And you can tell it's his mom sitting next to him, and she's kind of side eyes Gilbert, like, what are you going to say? What are you going to say? Are you going to say what a virgin is? And he's just like, virgin is, someone who has not lit a candle. And the mom's like, okay, good answer. Like, yeah, because my kids asked me that question when they watched the first one, when I was like, why are you watching Hocus Pocus? And they're like, I was like, okay. And then they asked me that question. I was like, that's a conversation for when you're older. Mommy's not going to talk about that right now. Nope. So yeah, it's definitely, they definitely had to shift how they did the movie because they have to do things a little bit differently now. I think most of the people complaining about that difference are probably people who would love America to get back to where they think it was great again. But anyway, that's my opinion on why those people are complaining in that fashion. I personally think there's nothing wrong with it. I don't like, it's different standards from back then. Back then they did things differently and presented things differently. So they're presenting it in this way. Nothing wrong with that. And it's still an amazing movie. I love the songs. I'm really excited to see the Sanderson sisters back. So it's great. Anyway, that's my take on it. And those are the things that people are complaining about that I found no issue with. And then of course my own critiques. But yeah, overall it's an amazing movie. I hope you give it a chance if you haven't already. And I don't have any thoughts on them possibly doing a third because I don't know what story they would tell. I was happy with this one. It's new faces, and it is like, okay, well, if they're going to bring them back, what's this going to be about? Uh, I mean, they were originally going to do the whole potions thing, but then Winifred's like, no, we're not going to dabble with potions. No, we're going to do something even bigger, something better. Like, there's so much potential for that, right? But I don't know about a third. I don't know what they would do. I don't, I mean, with Beckett, Izzy, and Cassie being like the new kind of like coven or whatever, like, with them doing magic, um, I don't know that anyone's gonna, like, maybe someone challenges them. I don't know. So I don't have any thoughts on that. But we'll see. They left it kind of open ended right there. So I don't know. But anyway, yeah, that's my review.